On November 10, 1991, in the forest bordering Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, forest officer Pandillapalli Srinivas was brutally murdered while on duty. The killer was none other than the notorious poaching kingpin, Veerappan. After killing Pandillapalli, he dismembered the body and took part of it as a trophy to taunt the Indian justice system. He then vanished into the deep forest, continuing his crimes in the shadows, terrifying the authorities. How could a murderer so openly defy the law and evade justice for decades? Like and subscribe to uncover the truth behind this shocking case. Our main character, Kusi Munisamy Veerappan, born in 1952 in Gopinatham village, Karnataka, to a poor farming family. His childhood was spent surviving in the forest, from herding cattle to learning hunting skills from his uncle, a local hunter. At age 10, Veerappan shot his first elephant. This event marked the beginning of his decades-long poaching career. By the age of 13, he trained in firearms and quickly became a skilled marksman in the region. At 17, Veerappan had a fierce dispute with a local man over hunting rights in the forest. According to locals, they had clashed multiple times over hunting interests in nearby forests. In one particularly heated conflict, Veerappan lost control and violently attacked the man, killing him on the spot. After the murder, he dragged the body deep into the forest and disposed of it to cover up the crime. The incident was never reported, partly due to fear of Veerappan, and also because the remote forest was beyond the reach of law enforcement. From that moment, Veerappan officially stepped into the criminal world. Around 1970, Veerappan began operating with more professional ivory poaching groups. The gang soon moved into the rugged forests at the tri-junction of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. This Black Triangle region had complex terrain, ideal for hiding and escaping. Poor coordination between the three states' forces allowed Veerappan's gang to turn the area into a stronghold for illegal poaching and sandalwood smuggling. In a short time, Veerappan and his gang funneled massive quantities of ivory and valuable sandalwood into the black market. He quickly amassed a fortune, most of which was buried deep in the forest. A small portion was shared with family and villagers as a way to win their hearts. This strategy gained Veerappan silent support from locals, who warned him of police presence, enabling his increasingly brazen operations. On August 27, 1983, Veerappan murdered 25-year-old forest officer K.M. Prithvi in the Kodagu forest. This was his first murder targeting law enforcement, marking an escalation in Veerappan's crimes. Prithvi was killed while trying to stop Veerappan's poaching activities. The incident forced the governments of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala to confront Veerappan directly. Soon after, Officer Pandillapalli launched an unprecedented manhunt involving coordinated forces from all three southern states. However, the operation failed quickly. Veerappan knew the terrain too well and was shielded by locals. After nearly 3 years, the team led by Pandillapalli traced Veerappan in the forest between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Sources said he had just returned from an ivory hunt and was resting in the lowland forest. The special forces immediately surrounded the area. At that time, Veerappan had only 2 aides and few weapons. He tried to escape but was caught after a few hours. However, in Pandillapalli's absence, Veerappan bribed an officer and escaped custody. After escaping, Veerappan resumed his criminal activities. On August 26, 1986, he killed forest ranger Siddharama Naik in Karnataka. In July 1987, Veerappan kidnapped and killed Tamil Nadu forest officer Chidambaram with an axe. In August 1989, he kidnapped and killed 3 forest staff from Biggar Forest, Tamil Nadu. Their dismembered bodies were found 19 days later. On April 9, 1990, Veerappan ambushed and killed 3 police officers and 1 constable near Hojanakal Falls, Karnataka. This was one of his boldest attacks, showing an escalation in his defiance of law enforcement. In May 1990, the governments of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu formed a special task force, STF, to capture Veerappan. Officer Pandillapalli was recalled from the US to lead it. Pandillapalli was appointed as deputy commander, focusing on infiltrating and dismantling the gang rather than direct confrontation. His main strategy was to win local trust, especially in areas affected by Veerappan's activities. In Gopinatham, Veerappan's hometown, he built schools, temples, and sandalwood gardens, creating stable jobs for villagers. He also built a Mariamman temple with 3 lakh rupees in public contributions. At the same time, he announced a leniency policy. Any gang member who surrendered would be eligible for reduced sentences and reintegration. He successfully convinced around 120 of Veerappan's men to surrender. The gang's numbers fell from hundreds to about 40, then under 15. Frustrated by defeat, Veerappan turned more brutal. He killed suspected informants, dismembering and displaying their bodies publicly. On July 10, 1991, Veerappan kidnapped a timber tycoon's son, demanding a ransom of 10 million rupees. After negotiations, the hostage was released for 1.5 million. His easy success led him to shift from poaching to kidnapping for ransom. A wave of similar cases targeting officials and businessmen spread fear across South India. However, this series of actions gradually eroded his public support. The Green Forest Robin Hood image began to collapse. People started siding with law enforcement. In July 1991, Pandillapalli's term with the Special Task Force ended. Still, he volunteered to stay with one goal: to witness Veerappan brought to justice. On November 9, 1991, Veerappan sent Pandillapalli a chilling message: "Come alone tomorrow. Unarmed, I will surrender." Pandillapalli knew it could be a deadly trap. Still, he accepted, believing it might be the last chance to end it all. The next morning, as Pandillapalli approached a stream near Gopinatham, a sudden gunshot hit him in the chest. Immediately, Veerappan appeared, coldly severed Pandillapalli's head, and vanished into the forest. Pandillapalli's death shocked and saddened the public. The Indian government posthumously awarded him the Medal of Valor and declared November 10th as Green Forest Martyrs Memorial Day. Near Gopinatham, where he was killed, a memorial was built to honor those who died for justice. After Pandillapalli's death in 1991, the government had to deploy additional border forces to join the manhunt. By mid-1993, Veerappan had only 5 loyal followers left. At the same time, the government offered a 50 million rupee reward for information or his capture. On April 9, 1993, Veerappan retaliated by planting 50 kilograms of explosives in a bus carrying police and civilians in Pollar, killing 22 of the 41 passengers. It was the deadliest bombing in Karnataka in the 20th century. Immediately after, the government raised the reward to 150 million rupees and expanded the nationwide manhunt. Not long after, he killed a trusted aide over betrayal suspicion. His paranoia and brutality escalated, driving many loyalists to flee or cooperate with police. In 1994, Veerappan grew weary of life on the run and sought negotiation, hoping for freedom in exchange for surrender. He sent a recorded message to the government: "If you pardon all my sins, I will surrender immediately." The government chose silence, as pardoning a mass killer, ivory smuggler, and violent criminal was unacceptable. After the failed negotiations, Veerappan resumed his violent activities. In 1996, he killed 20 police officers and 1 civilian in a single night. In 1997, he escalated pressure by kidnapping 2 photographers and 9 forest officers, demanding only a 2-year sentence in exchange for surrender. The government immediately rejected the proposal. Why was a dangerous criminal like Veerappan negotiated with like a politician? According to investigative documents, he had secret support from the Patali Makkal Kachi, PMK, a political party in Tamil Nadu. This party represents the Vaniyar community, a powerful caste group with significant voting power. Although Veerappan wasn't a Vaniyar, he knew how to win their favor. He shared money, sandalwood, and food with the poor, building the image of a hero fighting injustice. For people in remote areas, they only saw the immediate benefits Veerappan brought. Realizing this, many PMK politicians ignored his brutal acts to maintain votes. Some even publicly called for clemency, portraying Veerappan as a Robin Hood for the poor. PMK-friendly newspapers also supported this narrative, depicting him as a symbol of resistance. The triangle of Veerappan, the Vaniyar community, and political forces like PMK helped him survive longer and evade the law. After failed negotiations, Veerappan made his boldest move, kidnapping a national figure to pressure the government. On the night of July 30, 2000, Veerappan kidnapped Kannada film superstar Dr. Rajkumar from his Gajanar farmhouse. His wife, Parvatama, and 2 associates were also taken into the forest as hostages. News spread rapidly, plunging Bangalore into chaos. The Karnataka and Tamil Nadu governments were forced to urgently cooperate to manage the crisis. Journalist R.R. Gopal, editor of the Tamil magazine Nakhiran, was appointed as the government's negotiator with Veerappan. Through meetings, Gopal described Veerappan as small-built with a thick trademark mustache. However, behind the calm appearance were bold demands. During talks, Veerappan demanded the release of jailed Tamil nationalist group members and resolution of the Kaveri water dispute. However, officials and analysts believed these demands masked his real goal, a massive ransom. Veerappan wanted to disguise a ransom deal as a political negotiation. After 108 days, on November 15, 2000, Rajkumar was freed. Sources claimed the ransom reached 200 million rupees. The kidnapping triggered fierce criticism of the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu governments from the media. In response, Tamil Nadu's STF, led by K. Vijay Kumar, launched a secret intelligence plan, Operation Cocoon, to eliminate Veerappan. On October 18, 2004, when Veerappan left the forest for eye treatment, he didn't know his ambulance driver was an informant. When the vehicle reached the ambush point, the driver suddenly jumped out. The task force surrounded the area and demanded Veerappan surrender. Panicking, Veerappan fired first, forcing police to retaliate. The gunfight ended quickly. Veerappan and 3 close aides were killed on the spot, ending his decades-long criminal reign. According to official reports and common estimates, over nearly 36 years of criminal activity, Veerappan and his gang were responsible for the deaths of at least 184 people. The states of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka spent over 1 billion rupees on manhunts, with total estimated losses exceeding 78.4 billion rupees. Additionally, his gang killed over 300 elephants, smuggled ivory worth hundreds of millions of rupees, and trafficked 65 tons of valuable sandalwood, earning about 1.43 billion rupees. Veerappan's body was cremated under heavy security, but shockingly, thousands came to mourn him, some crying and chanting his name like a hero. Despite moral and legal condemnation, Veerappan's Green Forest Robin Hood image still lives on among some people in Tamil Nadu. In 2013, a group even built a statue and praised him as a symbol of resistance, sparking public outrage. In his hometown of Gopinatham, many celebrated like a festival. For them, his death marked the end of an era of fear, silence, and control. His story quickly appeared in films, books, documentaries, and even video games. The 2016 film Veerappan by director Ram Gopal Varma depicted his nearly 40-year criminal journey. After his death, many continued to flock to Gopinatham Forest, hoping to find the hidden treasure he was rumored to have buried. Veerappan's 36-year crime spree was not only a tragedy for hundreds of victims, but also a damning indictment of corruption, injustice, and the collapse of public faith in law. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. A luxury fishing boat drifts freely on the sea. The 4 crew members on board have vanished. Only bullet shells and bloodstains remain. The boat is called Joe Cool, a sports fishing boat worth tens of thousands of USD. It departed from Miami Beach with 4 experienced crew members and 2 unfamiliar passengers. But just 36 hours later, the entire crew disappeared without leaving a message or a distress signal. The only 2 people found, adrift on a lifeboat, claimed they were attacked by pirates and the 4 victims were killed and thrown into the sea. But this testimony immediately raised suspicion from the FBI. If it were pirates, why was all the property left intact? One of the 2 survivors is wanted for charges of sexual assault and stealing nearly $100,000. Why did he rent the Joe Cool? Was he acquainted with the person behind all of this? This is not just a missing persons case. It is a cold-blooded execution that has been meticulously planned and carefully executed. But the evidence, no matter how small, will never sink to the bottom of the ocean. Follow until the end of the story. Subscribe now to uncover the truth behind Joe Cool, the fishing boat turned death ship. On September 22, 2007, at the Miami Beach Marina, a 14.3-meter fishing boat named Joe Cool left the port, heading toward Bimini Beach, the Bahamas archipelago, more than 80 kilometers away. On board were 4 people: Captain Jake Branham, 27, his wife Kelly, his half-brother Scott Gamble, and Samuel Kyrie, a close family friend. They were seasoned veterans, having survived storms and spent years learning how to survive on the open sea. But that day, the trip wasn't about fishing. 2 strange men paid $4,000 in cash to privately charter the boat to Bimini. Although there were cheaper and more convenient options like flying, the 2 passengers insisted on taking the boat. They claimed they couldn't fly because their passports had been mistakenly packed in checked luggage. The story seemed reasonable, but it left an eerie feeling among the crew. However, no one worried too much. As long as the money was legitimate, they would provide the service. The next day, the boat didn't return as planned. Initially, Jake's uncle, Jeff Branham, who owned the Joe Cool, wasn't overly concerned. Delays had happened before, usually because passengers wanted to stay longer fishing or got drunk in Bimini. But by the end of the day, still no contact, and an uneasy feeling began to grow. Jake had shared with his family that he was only taking the 2 passengers to a small boat offshore, where they would meet their girlfriends. Then, he planned to go fishing and return in the late afternoon to prepare for the scheduled trip the next day. With a packed schedule, Jake always managed his time precisely. The sudden disappearance was out of character. At that point, the most plausible hypothesis was that the boat encountered technical failure. But no distress signal was sent. But the radio was silent, no distress calls. A modern boat like Joe Cool couldn't just disappear without a trace. Unless something worse had happened. The United States Coast Guard, USCG, immediately launched a large-scale search operation. Helicopters took off, scanning the vast stretches of sea. Patrol boats drew circles covering the entire maritime route from Miami to Bimini. All radars, satellites, and control stations were mobilized. But after dozens of hours, no results were found. Authorities began to suspect, could this case be more than just a disappearance? This sea area is known for drug smuggling activities, piracy, and many boat hijackings. But if this were a hijacking, it's hard to understand why the 4 experienced crew members didn't manage to send out a distress signal. 36 hours later, aboard the cutter P Island, an officer on deck spotted a blurry dot on the horizon. A strange object with no clear movement. The patrol boat immediately changed course and approached. The command tower identified it. It was a sports fishing boat. White, matching the description of Joe Cool. But its position, no one could believe. The boat was adrift about 48 kilometers north of Cuba and 225 kilometers off its original course. A destination no fisherman would aim for. Not because of a lack of fish, but because it was completely opposite to the current's flow. Meaning someone had deliberately steered the boat in that direction instead of letting it drift naturally north. Upon confirming Joe Cool's position, the USCG set up a perimeter, following high-risk target approach procedures. They suspected there might be pirates or armed individuals still on the boat. Weapons were drawn and patrol boats closed in from several directions. After receiving orders, the officers quickly boarded the boat. They searched the main deck and cabins, but the entire crew and passengers had vanished. A preliminary examination showed personal wallets, car keys, and fishing rods were still in place. No signs of luggage or personal belongings being gathered before departure. This was an important detail, showing the crew didn't leave the boat voluntarily. On the deck, investigators found scattered bloodstains, but the source was unclear. While it was suspected to be fish blood from fishing, the possibility that it was human blood couldn't be ruled out. Notably, one of the lifeboats on the boat was missing. Data from the ship's course and wind direction showed that the lifeboat had likely been deployed recently. This opens up the possibility that someone had left the boat. Meanwhile, a storm is approaching. An urgent expanded search operation begins, including searching the uninhabited Anguilla Cay Island through the night. Joe Cool is towed back to shore to protect the crime scene for investigation. With signs of irregularities at the crime scene, the USCG immediately requested the FBI's assistance in the investigation. On September 25, 2007, a search helicopter scanning the southern waters off Anguilla Cay spotted an unusual object floating amidst the waves. An orange lifeboat with a canopy drifting in the wind. The faint inscription, Joe Cool, was still visible on the side. As the helicopter descended, the wind from the rotor blew the tarp off the boat. Below were two men, curled up in a cramped space. They showed no signs of serious injuries, their clothes were dry, and they appeared alert. But their eyes reflected clear signs of tension and fatigue. Due to the loud noise, one of the men scribbled a note on paper and held it up for the rescue team. North Bimini. We were left on the boat, robbed, 4 people were killed. A short message, but enough to make the entire team change expression. The identities of the 2 men were confirmed shortly afterward. Guillermo Zarbozo, 18, a Cuban-American citizen, and Kirby Archer, 36, who had lived in Arkansas. They were the 2 passengers who had chartered the Joe Cool to Bimini on September 22nd. They were the last people on board, with the 4 victims. With initial statements claiming the incident was a pirate attack, the FBI and USCG immediately adjusted the investigation focus. The search for the victims, Jake Branham and his wife Kelly, Scott Gamble, and Samuel Carey, was officially canceled. The focus now was, could it really be pirates? Or were the 2 survivors the key pieces in this deadly mystery at sea? After Joe Cool was towed to shore, a special FBI investigation team conducted a second examination of the crime scene. The boat was completely sealed off. Any small detail could become a clue to unlock the entire case. Inside the boat, they found 4 spent 9mm bullet shells, the same type the survivors claimed were used by the pirates to kill the other 4 people. At first, this seemed to corroborate the testimonies of Kirby and Guillermo, but what was discovered next completely turned the case around. The items on the boat showed signs of being rummaged through, but nothing had been taken. A snorkel, a dart, handcuff keys, electronics, and fishing gear worth over $70,000 all remained intact. No signs of theft, no loss of property, and no reason for a group of pirates to kill and leave without taking anything valuable. When Guillermo and Kirby were brought back to shore, they were led past the Joe Cool boat. Guillermo, with a nonchalant attitude, turned to the FBI agent and said, "I've never been on that boat." A statement that caused the entire investigative team to freeze. He was found on the Joe Cool lifeboat, but denied ever stepping foot on the boat. Immediately, the FBI agents noted the contradiction in his statement. Guillermo's behavior became highly suspicious. Both men were separated and detained aboard the Coast Guard ship before they could leave the area. At a temporary FBI station set up near the Miami port, the official interrogation began. Guillermo Zarbozo, 18, remained relatively calm during the first hours. He recounted this scripted story. 3 Cuban pirates boarded the boat, killing Jake, Kelly, Scott, and Samuel in turn. They then forced Kirby Archer to steer the Joe Cool toward Cuba. According to Guillermo, the boat ran for 8 hours until it ran out of fuel. The pirates then left on another boat. He and Kirby boarded a lifeboat, drifting and waiting for rescue. The story seemed plausible until Kirby spoke up. In the second interrogation room, Kirby told a completely different version of events. He didn't mention the 3 pirates wearing striped shirts as Guillermo had described. The order in which the victims were killed also didn't match. 2 testimonies, 1 incident, but it was as if they were describing 2 different plays. The agents quickly noticed a major inconsistency. If it really were pirates, why would they leave all the valuable property on the boat? Why kill 4 people but spare 2 strangers? And more importantly, why would Kirby and Guillermo abandon a modern boat with full communication equipment to get on a lifeboat and drift in the storm? In all recorded pirate attacks, no pirates ever left behind equipment, personal belongings, and cargo worth tens of thousands of dollars. The behavior of the 2 survivors didn't fit that of victims. It mirrored exactly the actions of those pretending to survive to cover up a crime. As the contradictions in their statements continued, the FBI began to investigate the backgrounds of both suspects. Guillermo Zarbozo, 18, lived with his family in South Florida with no criminal record. He had worked as a security guard for a small office building, always appearing polite and respectful. Personal records showed he had applied to the police academy and dreamed of becoming a law enforcement officer. But Kirby Archer was completely different. Records from Arkansas immediately lit up. He was wanted for 2 serious charges. The first, sexual assault in an unsolved case. The second, and more serious, he had embezzled $92,000 while working as a customer care manager at a large Walmart supermarket, then fled the state. This information immediately changed the course of the case. The FBI concluded Kirby had a clear motive to commit the crime. He needed a means to escape the US, and Joe Cool was the perfect ticket. Kirby was immediately arrested to await processing under an existing fugitive warrant. But the case didn't stop there. Guillermo, the man accompanying Kirby, had no criminal record, no clear evidence, and still retained his freedom. The federal prosecutor started feeling the pressure. Murder on the sea is one of the hardest crimes to prosecute, when there is no clear evidence or alibi. Each hour passed is another opportunity for Guillermo to cover his tracks, erase evidence, or deny the crime forever. The FBI had to find evidence, and quickly. While Guillermo remained silent, FBI agents quietly expanded their investigation in Florida. A search warrant was issued for Guillermo's residence in Miami. During the search, they found a small file bag hidden in the drawer of his desk, containing several receipts, most of them ordinary. But one receipt made the investigation team stop in their tracks. It was a receipt for purchasing 9mm bullets, the date printed matching exactly with the time the incident occurred. More importantly, the batch number and brand of the bullets matched perfectly with the shells found on the Joe Cool. Although it wasn't a gun, the bullet shells and the paperwork became extremely powerful circumstantial evidence. The receipt was immediately sealed, analyzed, and added to the prosecution file. FBI agents returned to Kirby's cell, bringing copies of the evidence, images of the bullet shells, and comparison reports. Next to them, the prosecutor coldly offered, "If you remain silent, the death penalty is the only outcome." Faced with the physical evidence and legal pressure, Kirby began to lose his resolve. He stared at the bullet shells on the table. Things that once lay in his hands now became the chain leading him to hell. After a few minutes of silence, he whispered, "I didn't want to kill them, but I had no choice." From here, the real picture of the crime was officially revealed. In his first confession after pleading guilty, Kirby began to reveal a series of bizarre details. He said he met Guillermo at a small auto repair shop in Hialeah, Florida, where Guillermo worked as a night security guard. Kirby introduced himself as a CIA agent, preparing to carry out a secret mission in Cuba. He promised Guillermo that if he successfully assisted on the trip, he would be recruited by the CIA. To a teenager who had never stepped out of the state, the offer seemed like a ticket to the world of heroes. But in reality, the FBI concluded this was merely a script from a desperate criminal. Kirby knew he was wanted in Arkansas and was trying to escape to Cuba, where there was no extradition treaty with the US. Next, during the boat rental process, he was the one who fired the first shot, killing Captain Jake right on the deck. Kelly, Jake's wife, panicked and ran into the cabin, only to be killed a few minutes later. The whole boat descended into chaos. Scott and Samuel tried to fight back. Kirby claimed that it was Guillermo who fired the shot to kill the other 2. Then together, they threw the bodies of all 4 victims into the sea at night. None of them were ever found. In exchange for his confession, Kirby signed a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty. However, Guillermo, the remaining suspect, still vehemently denied all charges. Throughout the interrogations, he repeatedly said, "I am CIA personnel. This was a secret mission, and I am not allowed to disclose more." Before becoming a wanted murderer on the sea, Kirby Archer was once an exemplary citizen in the eyes of his neighbors in a small town in Arkansas. He was born into a working-class family, with his father working as a repairman and his mother as a supermarket cashier. No one would have guessed that the skinny child, who quietly read books about the military and the CIA, would later become a federal criminal. After graduating from high school, Kirby worked in various small jobs. He was smart, communicated well, and always knew how to please others. It was these abilities that helped him get hired as a customer service manager at a large Walmart supermarket. A stable job, but for Kirby, stability meant boredom. And he began to deceive. In less than 2 years, Kirby secretly transferred virtual refunds to his personal account. He did it systematically, using false identities, and misled the accounting department by handling internal issues. In total, he embezzled over $92,000 before an unexpected audit uncovered everything. When the arrest warrant was issued, Kirby had vanished. But just a few weeks later, another more serious accusation surfaced, this time even more severe: sexual assault. A female co-worker reported that Kirby had harassed and coerced her in the warehouse, threatening to fire her if she spoke out. The investigation wasn't completed before Kirby completely disappeared from Arkansas, becoming a federal fugitive. Months later, his last trace was discovered in Florida. There, with a new identity and an innocent appearance, he began weaving a new life with lies about the CIA, about national missions, and luring an innocent 18-year-old teenager into a crazy plan: hijacking a boat, crossing the sea, and eliminating witnesses. 1 year after the Sea Massacre in September 2008, Guillermo Zarbozo, at that time just 19 years old, was officially brought to trial in federal court in Florida. He faced 16 criminal charges, including first-degree murder, armed robbery, vehicle hijacking, and conspiracy to illegally cross the border. Throughout the trial, Guillermo continued to maintain his position. He was just a recruit for the CIA and acted on a secret mission. However, when confronted by the prosecutors with all the physical evidence, from the bullet purchase receipts, fingerprints on the boat, and Kirby's testimony, the silence began to overwhelm him. The trial lasted for several days, under intense scrutiny from the media. Finally, after more than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously agreed: Guillermo was guilty of all charges. Kirby's trial did not require lengthy debate, as he had already pled guilty to save his life. Kirby Archer and Guillermo Zarbozo were both sentenced, 5 consecutive life sentences without parole. This meant they would die behind bars, and every morning when they woke up, the sound of the waves would no longer be music, but a permanent reminder of the crimes they had committed. The Joe Cool case concluded with 2 harsh life sentences, but the scars left behind would never heal. The families of the 4 victims, Jake, Kelly, Scott, and Samuel, could not bury their loved ones. There was no grave to visit, no closure to call complete justice. Investigators called it one of the hardest murder cases to prosecute in U.S. maritime judicial history. Joe Cool, from a luxury fishing boat, became a symbol of a cold-blooded murder at sea. Since then, numerous changes in maritime security procedures, passenger control, and commercial maritime route surveillance have been implemented across the U.S. to prevent similar incidents from happening again. This video ends here. Thank you for following the Joe Cool case. Like, share, and subscribe to explore the next chilling truths. One click could be the key to unlocking an untold story. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.
In 1987, in the United States, a girl was tortured, assaulted, and brutally murdered before being dismembered and scattered across Molalla Forest. This was only the beginning of a series of murders involving 8 unfortunate victims. The press called the perpetrator the Molalla Forest Killer, a name synonymous with terror in Oregon at the time. None other than Dayton Leroy Rogers, a man with antisocial personality disorder and violent deviant tendencies, was the killer. The mystery surrounding him might have remained unsolved if the murderer hadn't made a critical mistake, killing in a public place, a parking lot, instead of his usual remote locations. You are about to follow a true story. Join us as we uncover dark secrets and thrilling details you've never heard before. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel as we dive into today's story. Molalla Forest, south of Portland, Oregon, is not just a place for camping or picnics. It became the stage for the heinous crimes of the man infamously known as the Molalla Forest Killer. But who was he? And how did he become the embodiment of such terror? Dayton Leroy Rogers was born on September 30th, 1953, in Moscow, Idaho. His family, led by Father Ortis Rogers and Mother Jasper Rogers, were devout members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He lived a reclusive life with his 2 biological sisters, 3 adopted siblings, and 1 foster brother. From a young age, Dayton was confined to a harshly disciplined environment. Family evenings were filled with hours of Bible study, followed by prayers. Jasper, Dayton's mother, was responsible for taking care of the children, while Ortis worked various jobs to make ends meet, from a baker to a teacher, but he was often unemployed. Ortis also ruled the family with violence. Whenever the children did something wrong, the punishment rarely stopped at scolding. Beatings and physical abuse were his teaching methods. This led Dayton and his siblings to grow up in an environment of fear and trauma. Ortis banned anything he deemed inappropriate, including music, books, and images related to sexuality. The family frequently moved because Ortis couldn't hold a stable job. At one point, the entire family lived in a chicken truck with a dirt floor, which Ortis proudly called home. It was in this setting that Dayton began exhibiting abnormal behavior. As a teenager, he developed violent and deviant desires, sometimes directed toward his own sisters. He frequently stole his sister's shoes to satisfy his urges. This was only the beginning of a series of increasingly deviant behaviors in his life. In 7th grade, Dayton had his first encounter with the law when he was caught shooting BB guns at passing cars. When Ortis learned of the incident, he resorted to violence, claiming to beat the devil out of his son. These punishments only deepened Dayton's hatred and isolation. Concerned about Dayton's uncontrollable behavior, the family sent him to Columbia Academy, a strict religious private school in Spangle, Washington. However, Ortis soon lost his job again, forcing the family to move to Oregon. Dayton was then enrolled at Emerald Junior Academy, another private school. During this time, Dayton's relationship with his parents grew increasingly strained. He despised Ortis for his harshness and violence, and resented his mother for never standing up for him. At 16, Dayton dropped out of school and left his family, moving to Corvallis, Oregon, to start an independent life. He worked as a house painter and began building the facade of an ordinary man. But deep inside, the darkness of his childhood continued to grow, turning him into a nightmare no one could foresee. In 1972, after 3 years in Corvallis, Oregon, Dayton Leroy Rogers decided to move to Eugene to seek new opportunities. In Eugene, Dayton met Julie, a 16-year-old girl. With his charm and eloquence, Dayton quickly won her affection. Just weeks after meeting, the couple decided to marry, despite opposition from Julie's family. Dayton's family kept in touch with him until this point, but his marriage to Julie, a Lutheran, led them to cut all ties with him. Notably, what angered them was not that Julie was too young, but that her religious beliefs were incompatible with theirs. At first, their marriage seemed peaceful, but just 30 days after the wedding, Dayton committed his first crime. One day, he lured a 15-year-old girl into the woods near the Molalla area under the pretense of intimacy. There, the darkness within his mind began to reveal itself. Dayton suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed the girl repeatedly in the stomach. However, in a rare moment of clarity, he decided to take the girl to a nearby hospital for emergency care, with the knife still lodged in her stomach. At the hospital, Dayton fabricated a strange story. He told the police that the day before, he and the girl had gone into the woods to get close, and they had planned to meet again the next day. But when he came to pick her up, she had stabbed herself in the stomach. Dayton's story immediately raised suspicions among investigators. Why would a girl stab herself in the middle of the woods? And why did Dayton drive her for hours to the hospital instead of calling for help immediately? After partially recovering, the girl decided to tell the truth. She confirmed that they had gone into the woods the previous day, but during their second meeting, Dayton had unexpectedly attacked her. She managed to convince him to take her to the hospital, but he forced her to stick to his fabricated story to avoid greater trouble. The case went to court in February 1973. Prosecutors charged Dayton Leroy Rogers with aggravated assault with the intent to kill. However, Dayton, with his calm demeanor and persuasive ability, claimed the incident was merely a misunderstanding. During the trial, Dayton's defense attorneys argued that he didn't intend to kill the girl and acted in a moment of uncontrollable rage. They emphasized that Dayton took the victim to the hospital, something a murderer would never do. Psychologists were called to assess Dayton's mental state. Their report indicated that he suffered from severe neurological disorders with violent tendencies. However, the experts also concluded that he understood the difference between right and wrong, and was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime. Despite the victim's detailed and credible testimony, the jury was swayed by Dayton's feigned remorse. As a result, in late February 1973, Dayton received only 4 years of probation instead of a prison sentence. This verdict sparked controversy. Many in the community were outraged, believing the legal system had been too lenient on a dangerous individual. However, Dayton saw this as a pardon, and he began delving deeper into crime without restraint. Less than a year after the 1973 trial, Dayton Leroy Rogers was involved in another serious assault. This time, the victims were 2 teenage girls who had run away from home. Dayton and his wife, Julie, allowed the girls to stay at their home temporarily. During this time, Dayton sank deeper into alcoholism, frequently drunk and displaying inappropriate behavior toward women, especially the 2 girls living with him. He pressured them to fulfill his physical desires, threatening them with trouble if they refused. Julie, who had endured Dayton for a long time, finally reached her breaking point. One evening, unable to tolerate him any longer, she left the house, leaving Dayton alone with his twisted thoughts and the 2 teenage girls. That night, in a drunken rage, Dayton became more violent than ever. He attacked the 2 girls with a glass bottle, escalating the situation into a full-blown altercation. Despite being injured, the 2 girls managed to escape and found help from neighbors. The attack led to Dayton's immediate arrest. Authorities decided to send him to the Oregon State Mental Hospital for evaluation and treatment. This was the first time Dayton was formally forced to confront his severe psychological issues. While Dayton was confined, Julie seized the opportunity to escape him permanently. She filed for divorce and quickly moved to California, leaving Dayton and his dark thoughts behind. At the mental hospital, psychologists assessed Dayton and diagnosed him with severe personality disorders, including violent tendencies and a lack of emotional control. However, after a few months of treatment, in November 1974, the doctors declared that Dayton was cured. In December 1974, Dayton was released. This decision sparked controversy, with many suspecting that he had simply learned to manipulate the doctors by saying what they wanted to hear. Shortly after his release, Dayton quickly found a new woman named Sherry Miller. Perhaps he felt that having a wife would help him mask his true nature and appear normal in society. Sherry, unaware of Dayton's dark past, became deeply attached to him, believing she had found the man of her dreams. In October 1975, just 7 months after dating, Dayton Leroy Rogers married Sherry Miller. Initially, everything seemed fine. However, like his previous marriage, Dayton was arrested the same year on suspicion of assaulting a woman. Due to a lack of solid evidence, the jury could not convict him. Dayton escaped punishment yet again, which only boosted his confidence in outsmarting the law. In 1977, Dayton struck again. He picked up a young woman on the road, and after some casual conversation, drove her to a secluded area outside Portland. After parking, Dayton suddenly pulled out a knife, forcing her into the back seat. He tied her up with electrical wire and assaulted her while she was helpless and terrified. In her fear, the victim came up with a plan to escape. She asked to step outside to relieve herself. Dayton, smug in his control, agreed. As soon as she was free, she ran for her life. She sprinted until she reached a residential area where locals helped her and called the police. Meanwhile, Dayton tried to flee the scene, but in a twist of fate, his car got stuck in the mud. The spinning tires gave away his location, allowing the police to track and arrest him on the spot. In court, Dayton pleaded guilty but claimed that he acted due to a mental breakdown. This time, however, the jury was not convinced. Prosecutors presented a long record of his prior violent behavior, exposing him as a dangerous predator who had repeatedly escaped justice. Dayton was sentenced to 5 years in prison for first-degree assault. The prosecutor concluded the trial with a scathing remark. "It's incomprehensible how a monster like Dayton Leroy Rogers could have been overlooked for so long." During his time in prison, Dayton tried to portray himself as a model inmate. He participated in rehabilitation programs and continued to manipulate those around him with his calm and trustworthy demeanor. In 1982, after serving his sentence, Dayton was released. He returned to Sherry, who still trusted her husband despite his crimes. Together they had a son, and Dayton opened a small engine repair shop to make a living. Outwardly, Dayton seemed to have settled down, but beneath the surface, the dark thoughts in his mind continued to grow, waiting for the opportunity to explode. On August 31st, 1987, a gloomy morning, a hunter ventured deep into the Molalla forest. Suddenly, he stopped when he noticed something unusual beneath the thick ferns. Curious, he approached for a closer look, only to be shocked. The naked body of a woman lay lifeless, her legs severed. Blood had dried, leaving only bruises on her body. Trembling, he rushed back to his vehicle and called the police. Shortly after, he led them back to the site, marking the beginning of a lengthy and haunting investigation. Police immediately cordoned off the area and expanded the search. Within a week, search teams discovered 6 more female bodies in the same area. The bodies were found in various stages of decomposition, indicating that the victims had been killed over a period of 1 to 3 months. 6 victims were identified: Lisa, 23, Maureen Hodges, 26, Christine Adams, 35, Cynthia Dorr, 20, Nan Cates, 26, and Riai Giles, 16. The 7th victim, due to advanced decomposition, could not be immediately identified. All the victims shared common traits. They had been strangled, assaulted, and inflicted with severe injuries to the abdomen, chest, and head before death. In some cases, their legs had been sawed off just above the ankles with what appeared to be a hacksaw. Near the dump sites, police collected numerous critical pieces of evidence. Empty Smirnoff vodka bottles, orange juice cartons, knotted shoelaces, torn fabric, and a knife with human tissue still on it were found. Upon further investigation, authorities realized the knife found at the scene matched the size and brand of the knife used to kill Jennifer Smith. On August 7, 1987, he attacked and murdered Jennifer Smith in the parking lot of an auto repair shop in Portland, Oregon. Several witnesses saw the incident and reported it to the police, leading to his immediate arrest before he could escape. Following this discovery, police quickly searched Dayton's home, workplace, and vehicle. They uncovered more disturbing evidence: partially burned women's clothing, bloodstains on the floor, and personal belongings of multiple victims. All this evidence led to an unavoidable conclusion. Dayton Leroy Rogers was not just a lone attacker. He was a serial killer who had used the Molalla forest as a dumping ground to conceal his crimes. News of the case spread quickly, shocking the entire state of Oregon. The media dubbed Dayton as the Molalla Forest Devil, and the gruesome details of the victims enraged the public. A comprehensive investigation was launched. Investigators worked tirelessly to understand Dayton's motives and how he selected his victims, aiming to construct a full profile of this deranged killer. In February 1988, Dayton Leroy Rogers was put on trial for the murder of Jennifer Smith, a young woman killed in the parking lot of a Denny's restaurant the year prior. During the trial, Rogers' defense lawyers attempted to build a case of justification. They argued that Jennifer's death was an act of self-defense. According to their narrative, Rogers reacted in panic after being attacked by Jennifer first. However, the prosecution dismantled this argument with a series of irrefutable evidence. They argued that Rogers had killed Jennifer not out of fear but to satisfy his perverse sexual desires, as demonstrated by his prior crimes. The jury did not take long to reach a verdict. Rogers was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. This was a temporary closure for Jennifer's case, but it was far from the end. Shortly afterward, Dayton was put on trial again, this time for the murder of 6 other women in the Molalla forest. This second trial unveiled horrifying and deeply disturbing details. Witnesses included 11 former sex workers who had escaped encounters with Rogers. They recounted terrifying dates with him. According to their testimonies, Rogers started by being friendly, offering vodka and orange juice. But then things took a sudden turn. He became violent, tying their hands and feet and threatening to cut off their legs with a knife. Evidence from the Molalla forest scene further corroborated the witnesses' accounts. Dozens of mini vodka bottles were found near the sites where the bodies were dumped. Hair and jewelry from the victims were also discovered in the wood stove at Rogers' repair shop. Prosecutors argued that Rogers had meticulously planned each murder. The victims were killed under similar circumstances, strangled, stabbed multiple times, and, in some cases, their legs sawed off with a hacksaw. On June 7, 1989, the jury convicted Rogers on 2 counts of aggravated murder for each of the 6 identified victims. The 7th victim, at the time of trial, remained unidentified, meaning Rogers was not charged for her death. It wasn't until 2013 that the 7th victim was identified as 18-year-old Tanya Johnson through DNA testing. By then, Rogers had already received the death penalty, making additional charges unnecessary. Rogers was sentenced to death in 1989, a punishment many believed was entirely deserved for his crimes. However, the death penalty in the United States, particularly in Oregon, has been a highly controversial issue, with frequent overturning of death sentences. Between 1989 and 2022, Dayton Rogers faced multiple retrials. The Oregon Supreme Court overturned his death sentences in 1992, 2000, 2012, and 2015, citing procedural issues and changes in the law. On November 12, 2021, Rogers' death sentence was overturned for the 4th time, influenced by new legislation signed by Governor Kate Brown that reduced the criteria for aggravated factors required to seek the death penalty. On December 13, 2022, Governor Kate Brown commuted the death sentences of all death row inmates in Oregon, including Rogers. He officially received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Now, at the age of 70, Dayton Leroy Rogers is serving his sentence at the Two Rivers Correctional Institution in Umatilla, Oregon. He has been officially linked to the deaths of 8 women, though many believe the true number of victims could be higher. Over the years, Rogers has never confessed to the details of his crimes. He has taken his secrets to the grave, leaving unanswered questions for the victims' families and those who seek to understand the true nature of a serial killer. The story of Dayton Leroy Rogers, the Molalla Forest Devil, remains one of the most chilling serial killer cases in Oregon's history. It not only exposes horrifying crimes, but also forces us to confront the flaws in a legal system that allowed such a monster to evade justice for so long. The unfortunate victims, from mothers and daughters to young girls with bright futures, are forever etched in the memories of their families and friends. Their names serve as a reminder of the indelible pain caused by someone like Rogers. Thank you for following this story. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more horrifying and mysterious cases. Remember, no matter how terrifying the truth, it must be told to ensure justice is served.